Hi everyone, as requested once again, I'm gonna be reviewing a video by Marina Karlova. The last video that I reviewed was about how schools are prisons. This one is called Modern Slavery, the Logic Behind Freedom. It sounds right up my alley.
You need permits to build on land you own. In some places you even need
Yes, because you don't actually own it. It's an illusion, seeing as we cannot own land. That's why countries also don't exist. It's all imaginary.
permission to collect rainwater that falls on your property. Think about this for a second. Water from the sky, land you paid for, and you need state approval to use either.
Yes, they even try to control nature in many different ways. It's insane.
This isn't a quirk of bureaucracy. It's a perfect demonstration of something much deeper. We're told slavery ended, but apply basic logic to how we actually exist, and what emerges is slavery that simply scaled up and got better marketing.
Yes, and the slavery of today is worse in many ways because, for one thing, people don't even understand that they are enslaved. Most people on earth probably believe that they are free, or at least somewhat free. They do not understand how insanely enslaved they are because back in the days, when you had actual physical chains around you, or you were chained to the wall, whatever, then you knew that, and you still understood that you need to be eating meat. You understood that seeds are not food. You understood what life is about in general. But nowadays, you don't. Nowadays, people live pretty much the opposite lives of the lives that they should be living, their actual natural lives. This kind of severe brainwashing and manipulation is way worse than understanding that you're enslaved, actually physically. Yeah, in so many ways, it's just so much worse. It makes you so much more miserable.
The whips became paperwork. The chains became debt. The masters became institutions. And the slave
Right, you believe that if you get a letter, just a paper with symbols on it, telling you to do something, that you need to do it. Yeah, actually, a good way to put it. It's kind of like a whip. Yeah, because you're afraid of the consequences, which may be whipping in some countries today still, although that's probably not very common in most places. But if not that, then something else. But the actual consequence in the end may be physical, which is what you're afraid of.
slaves were taught to defend their own slavery by calling it civilization. Let's look at the definition of slavery. The international standard, the 1930 Forced Labor Convention, ILO number 29, gives the following definition. All work or service which is extracted from any person under the menace of any penalty and for which the said person has not offered himself voluntarily. So, you cannot opt out without punishment that threatens survival. Your labor's product is taken under threat, and you
Yes, that's a good point. You could technically try to go and live in nature and get your own food, but in most places on earth, if you would try to do that, they would actually physically stop you because they understand that to achieve something, you need to act physically, which just means naturally. It's the same thing because every animal only acts naturally. When there's a problem, they solve it. They don't write a letter to the wolf priest to forgive them or to do something to another wolf who harmed them, and so on. You get it. It's nonsense. That's what people in slavery do. Point being, most people are not allowed to live the way they want to. They are not allowed to get their own food, hunt, which is why they will rely on the system. And to survive in the system, they will have to work usually to get non existent money some paper with symbols on it, which they will then exchange for sort of real food, some toxic garbage usually, but it will somehow keep them alive, somewhat.
No realistic way to live without losing access to resources necessary for life. Can you opt?
Yeah, it's very hard. There are some places that you could maybe go to where it's very cold, where nobody really wants to be. But if you try to live naturally, in Europe, for example, it's not going to work out at all. There's been some cases, and the police is always called, and in some cases, it ended lethal also for the people who try to live naturally.
Out of the economic system. Try living without documents, without paying taxes, without participating in the money economy. Every piece of land in every modern nation is either owned or controlled by the state. Building shelter requires permits. Growing food requires compliance with agricultural regulations. Hunting and fishing require licenses. Even being homeless is criminalized in most urban centers. Refuse to participate and you face fines, imprisonment, or...
Exactly. Yeah, it's if you refuse to participate, whether you're homeless, you try to hunt, do anything. Yeah. In some countries, it's manageable, but in over 90% of countries, you can forget about it.
death. That's forced participation. Not in some countries, but in every country that calls itself developed. Even if you live on a...
Yes, exactly. If you feel like you need to work, then you're enslaved, of course. Because you don't want to do it. Do you want to go to work tomorrow? Maybe you're watching this video in the morning right now before work. Do you want to go there? Probably not. 99% of people don't want to do what they do at their job. You feel forced to do it, but it shouldn't be like this. That alone proves it.
boat in Guatemala, you're not free. They demand boat registration, navigation permits cost money, and you still need visas to go anywhere. It's just a different layer of bureaucracy. The extraction is obvious. Before you receive money you supposedly earned, multiple entities take their cut. Income tax, social security, Medicare, pension contributions. After you get it, they take more. Sales tax, property tax, vehicle registration, fuel tax, communication tax. Use what's left to buy land, property tax forever, or they seize it. Start a business, licensing fees, regulatory compliance, corporate tax, payroll tax, import duties. At every single point where value changes hands, extraction occurs. The average person in a developed nation works from January to May just to pay their total tax burden. And refusing means men with guns eventually show up. That's extraction under threat of violence. But surely you can...
Yes, but the people don't see it that way. It's twisted around. The other side is the bad side, and they want justice. I'm not gonna get that deep into it on YouTube. I have videos explaining it in detail on Telegram. But yeah, it's hard to say anything. It's just clear who's in the right. Let's just say that. It's clear who the oppressed ones are. Whatever. It's a deep topic.
leave. Go live in the woods, raise goats, grow vegetables. Except the woods are owned, either privately or by the state. The land requires purchase and perpetual tax payments. Building codes dictate what shelter you can construct. The goats need veterinary certificates and agricultural registration. The vegetables, if sold...
Yes, and in most places they also need that thing. For them to be healthy, of course. Of course.
or bartered require tax reporting and often agricultural permits. Your very existence requires identification documents. Try crossing any border without papers. Try accessing any...
Right, and it's just papers with your photo, just a photo, and some symbols on it saying you can pass, basically. Just nothing. Anybody could have made it. But yeah, we see that as licenses, passports, ID cards, which will eventually be digital. Whatever the case, it never existed in the first place. You imagined it the whole time. You imagined the passport, the worth of it, the meaning behind it, and you're gonna imagine how you have a digital ID.
resource without proof of your assigned number. Try existing anywhere on Earth without being claimed by some state as its property. There is no legitimate exit that doesn't lead back into another identical system or to punishment. Classical slavery had one person owning another. Modern slavery has everyone owned by abstract systems, the state, the corporation, the market. This isn't better. It's worse. You can't rebel.
Yes, she says it well. Abstract systems, which is exactly what I mean. They don't exist. It's imaginary, abstract. It's something that you imagine. If I do this or don't do this, if I try to cross a border, which is in your head, which doesn't exist, and I don't show them man made symbols, which essentially just say, yes, you can pass, then I cannot pass. You just imagine it the whole way. That's how much of a joke it is. But this is how enslaved we are. We are enslaved by, as I say always, these invisible chains. We just feel like we cannot do anything which we naturally want to do. So it's really, in most cases, a lot worse than the old kind of slavery, which people were at least aware of.
Against an obstruction. You can't assassinate a system. You can't even clearly identify your master because your master is distributed across thousands of regulations, departments, and enforcement mechanisms.
That's a good point because even if the people who created the system would be gone somehow, you would still have all of the people on this earth who are used to it, who don't even understand a different kind of life. Although, when it comes to a real survival situation, then usually the natural instincts kick in very quickly.
The genius move was renaming slavery as freedom. You're free to choose between employers, like being free to choose which field to work. You're free to vote, to select which management style you prefer for your captivity.
Right, yeah, exactly. For your captivity, yeah. Yeah, which one do you want? Slave? You're captive and you're gonna be living in captivity your whole life, but you can choose who's gonna rule over you, which they don't even. Actually, the people behind the scenes do that, but that's a different topic. But still, whatever the case, even if they would be in charge, what a joke. What a joke, man. A joke on you.
You're free to speak as long as you don't threaten the system's functioning.
Yeah, nowadays you really can't say anything. Again, you can, but you're afraid of the consequences, so you say that you can't or you're not allowed to. Of course, I could say what I think about all of this right now, but then this would be my last video, so that's the thing. That's how the system controls you.
You're free to travel with proper documentation, nation records, and approval. You're free to trade within regulated markets using approved currencies. Every freedom is actually a permission within predetermined boundaries. They even made slaves proud of their slavery. They called it patriotism. When the system
I'm curious what she's gonna say now, but that's what I always talk about. Yeah, people worship their own cages, these mind cages. Not that they really actually want to be enslaved. It's a deeper topic. I have a whole video about this. It's called Slaves Worship Their Own Cage. It's on Telegram. Not gonna talk about that here, but we'll see, yeah. We'll see. I think I know what she's about to say.
needs resources, oil fields in the Middle East, rare earth mines in Africa, shipping lanes in Asia. It sends its slaves to kill and die for these assets. But slaves won't die for corporate profit margins or geopolitical chess moves.
Right. Yeah. Basically, you really attach yourself to your country. Attaching yourself to your people, so to speak, that's a different story. There's even a natural side to it, but attaching yourself to a man-made flag, even the language, really, that's somewhat understandable still. But the culture, some traditions, all of which are man-made, half of which don't even exist probably, that's nonsense. You're attaching yourself to nothing when it doesn't actually exist, or just some traditional instruments or whatever you associate with your so-called country in your head, the colors of the flag, and then you wear that and go and do your job, as you would say. Yeah, and then you come back as if you're a hero. But then when you do the same thing in your country, you're the biggest monster on earth, and you would be all over the news. That's the difference. I'm not gonna get into detail what I'm talking about, but you get what I mean, right? You go and do something outside of the country for your country. That's what they say. Hero, flowers. You do literally the same in your own country. Biggest monster on earth, all over the media. Just you're demonized to hell by everybody. But you did literally the same in both places, and these countries don't even exist. That's the biggest joke. You go outside of the country, which doesn't even exist, you do something, and you do it on different land, exactly the same, and you're a monster. Hero monster.
So they're told they're dying for freedom, for democracy, for their way of life. The slave's blood becomes the slave's honor. The ultimate.
Yeah, exactly. And the biggest joke is that when the family members of these people get the casket with their loved one who served the country, then they are sometimes even maybe not honored, but they feel some kind of pride. Yes, but at the same time, you can just see them crying and thinking, what the fuck did I do? Why did I let him go there?
Inversion. Slaves killing other slaves to maintain the very system that enslaves them both and feeling proud about it. And even
Yeah, exactly. Showing really any kind of respect towards officials is the same as high-fiving the prison guards when you are in prison. Same thing. Does anybody do that in prison? No, because in prison, they physically realize that they are enslaved, living in captivity. Then they don't go around thanking the prison guards, but in the system we do, because people don't realize that they are enslaved. Fuck, man.
if you don't share this ideology, you're still coerced into it, because refusal is illegal. Conscription, draft, mandatory service, the system ensures that when it needs bodies, yours is available. Then look at the debt mechanism. Before you take your first breath, you already owe. Your share of national debt exists before you do. In the United States, it's over $100,000 per citizen, including children. Education doesn't free you, it indebts you. Average student loan debt exceeds annual median income in most developed nations. Housing, 30-year mortgages are normal, meaning you'll work half of your life just for shelter. Healthcare, even with insurance, a major illness means bankruptcy for most. Starting a business requires capital, which means debt. The entire economy runs on credit, which means the entire population runs on obligation. Debt is literally bondage, from the Latin obligare, meaning to bind. You are bound to labor until you pay. And the system ensures.
Yeah, in the US, it's way worse. In Europe, we don't really have that. Some people do, but it's not a common thing to be in debt and owe people money and whatever. all of which doesn't exist anyway. Money doesn't exist, the debt doesn't exist. It's all in your head, of course. Think about it. Let's say that you are $10,000 in debt right now. You're imagining it, because if you would now go and live in a forest, does it exist? Did it ever exist? Was it ever real? Did you see it, smell it? Were you able to touch the debt? No, of course not. Yeah, it just depends. When you live in the system, you're caught up in it. When you're somewhat connected to reality, it means nothing to you.
You never fully pay. Interest rates, inflation, and recurring costs guarantee perpetual obligation. The bureaucratic maze isn't accidental either. Tax codes, thousands of pages long. Regulations no human could fully comprehend. Forms that require professional help to complete. Constant fear of making an error that could destroy you financially. This learned helplessness is deliberate psychological conditioning. You're meant to feel too stupid to exist without the system, too small to challenge it, too confused to see it clearly. The complexity isn't a bug, it's a feature. It creates a priest class of lawyers and accountants who interpret the sacred texts of regulation for a fee, making you dependent on intermediaries for basic life functions. When confronted with this logic, people defend their slavery. They say without the system there would be chaos, as if the system doesn't create most of the chaos it claims to protect you from. Crime emerges from poverty the system creates. Wars are fought for resources the system wants. Economic crashes happen because the system gambles with your labor. They say we need it for roads and hospitals, as if infrastructure justifies forced servitude. Medieval serfs also got protection and land use from their lords. That didn't make them free. They say it's the best system we have, as if the best form of slavery is still not slavery. But the most insidious...
Right, this man-made system does create chaos. I have a video about this on Telegram, once again, called Man-Made Chaos versus Natural Order, which explains how when you live naturally, as much as you can in the system anyway, or of course ideally purely naturally, then there's an order to everything. This order is always there anyway, but we try to silence it, push it down, suppress it as much as possible. And when you do that, always when you go against nature, chaos arises, always. It's always chaotic, everything. That's why people feel chaotic, as if there's no order to their lives. You go to school, you work, you have pets instead of children, you eat a vegetarian, vegan diet, whatever. You go against nature completely, and then you just feel as if your life is chaos. Everything is chaotic then. Also kind of biologically, because your brain is all messed up because of eating unnatural food. Yes, and nature provides you a true order. When you do something naturally, you feel as if everything is going exactly the way it should be. As I always say, there's this natural path, the only path. And when you're on the path, everything feels in order, as if it's perfect, because nature is perfect. And everything that's man-made and tries to suppress nature automatically becomes chaotic. That's kind of in the direction of what she means.
His defense is that this is voluntary, that it's a social contract you implicitly agreed to. What contract? When did you sign it? Were you given an option to refuse? The contract requires informed consent between equals with the option to decline. Being born into a system that threatens you with death or imprisonment if you don't comply isn't a contract. It's coercion. The social contract is a philosophical fig leaf covering naked force. The agricultural slave could at least see their bondage. They knew who owned them. They could dream of killing their master or running away. Modern slaves can't even name their condition because the language to describe it has been systematically destroyed. When you call imprisonment freedom and slavery citizenship, when you call exploitation opportunity and extraction contribution, you've perfected a control system that maintains itself through the minds of the controlled. I was watching documentaries about history of slavery, and I particularly registered something important they mentioned. Slaves born into slavery were easier to control than those who remembered freedom.
Yeah, exactly. I also talk about this always. If you would be born in the wild, which is just nature, just a different word for it. I know that the word wild has been demonized, but the original meaning of it is just nature, essentially. Then, if you live like that for 10 plus years, especially past puberty, domesticating you, making you into a slave would be close to impossible. Maybe with insane brainwashing and a lot of force somehow, but you can't really, because you're too used to natural food, you're too healthy, your brain works too well, you're not conditioned, brainwashed, manipulated. You feel as if you can do what you want to do because you can, of course, because it's nature. It's the way you should be living naturally. You just do whatever you want to do all the time. And everything that you do, which is natural, is good. So when you live with your family, nature, huge family, and you're all doing what you naturally want to do, that's good. So there's no problems at all because you're all following the same path. It's the same as you all walking on the same path. So you're always doing, always, literally always, no exceptions, exactly what you want to do. And life in slavery is not you always necessarily not doing what you want to do. It's not as if it's always like that, but over 90% of the time, basically.
First generation slaves required chains and constant violence, but their children didn't need chains. Slavery was their normal. Now look at us. Your parents apply for your slave number. They call it a social security number or national insurance number, while you're still in the hospital. By the time you can think, you've already spent years in an institution designed to normalize your servitude. School doesn't teach you to question why you need permission to exist. It teaches you to compete for better positions within your captivity. 12 years minimum of conditioning, and by the end, you can't even imagine life outside the system. Ask anyone how they'd live without documents, without the state, without the structure. Watch them panic. But who would be...
And nowadays you also have phones, all of this technology. People are also dependent on that. Yeah. And nobody's gonna change this system.
build the roads? Who would provide security? They literally cannot conceive of existence outside their bondage. Your parents...
Yeah, as if you need roads. As if you need to destroy nature and put cement over it. It would be way more beautiful without roads. And yeah, they cannot take care of themselves, so they believe that they need somebody else to protect them.
tell you that you have more opportunities than they did. Your grandparents say you live better than they ever could. And materially, that might be true. But this is like house slaves telling field slaves' children they're lucky to work indoors. The conditions improved. The structure remained. You're still property. You just have better accommodations. This isn't a call to action or a manifesto for revolution. The system knows perfectly how to deal with these. This is simply recognition of what is. You are not free. You are held in a sophisticated form of bondage that has been hidden from you through linguistic manipulation, psychological conditioning, and systemic complexity. Your owners don't need whips because they've colonized your mind. You police yourself, pay your own maintenance costs, and thank them for the privilege. The only difference between you and a classical slave is that your slavery is distributed across institutions instead of concentrated in a single master, and you've been trained from birth to call it freedom. The system even took from you the dignity of knowing you're a slave. You defend your bondage. You attack those who point it out. You believe you're free because you can choose between Coke and Pepsi, between Democrat and Republican, between Apple and Android. These are choices slaves are allowed to make. They don't make you free. Recognition doesn't free you from the cage, but it ends your collaboration with your own enslavement. You can't escape the system. It owns every inch of land, controls every resource, monitors every transaction. But you can stop calling your cage a home. You can stop defending your chains as jewelry. You can stop confusing permissions for freedoms. That's not conspiracy or ideology. That's just
Yeah, this reminds me of how people fight for laws or better laws, better enslavement, some bill that they want to be passed. They go out on the streets and protest. I want this bill. I want this bill, meaning that I want to be enslaved in this way. That's a better way to be enslaved. Please, masters, enslave me differently.
logic applied to observable reality. That's the main source of all the anxiety and depression. We don't even know what true freedom feels like.
Another great video. This talk reminded me of how people treat homeless people. Homeless people oftentimes are simply people who do not want to participate in the system. They do not want to obey the man-made rules, which people simply made up, which don't even exist. Yes, oftentimes there's also alcoholics and drug addicts who live on the streets, but even some of those people just didn't want to participate anymore. Some of them simply want to feel happy somehow. They don't know how, which is why they end up using these drugs to make them feel good. That's what they believe. And as she said at the end, people don't even really know how freedom feels like. Freedom would feel great if you would experience it, but I think that the imagination of freedom could even feel scary to a slave, because a slave lives the opposite life of a natural human being. A natural human being, as I said, always does whatever he or she wants to do every day, your whole life. It's hard to imagine, I get it, because you just do what you want to do always. It's really hard because you just almost never do what you want to do, because it's all not allowed, it's wrong, it's bad. That's what you're told your whole life by your parents, the school, the media. You're just completely being manipulated and brainwashed left and right, as the political system also. And that's why if people would be let out into nature, it would be very scary to them. And nature is also portrayed as the scary place in movies, horror movies even. There's these strange people and wild people, natural people living there. No, it's safer here. And you can argue about that. You could maybe say that it's safer in some ways. But of course, there's way too many downsides, even if that would be true. That's the thing. That's why whenever I talk about nature, people find it very offensive, in some ways disgusting, as it is with eating raw meat, because they live the opposite lives. So to them, nature is something bad. If they would be confronted with actual nature and freedom, they would love it, of course, in the end. But when you only talk about it and you don't experience it, it can seem strange. There's some topics which I obviously won't mention, but simply when it comes to raw meat, when you don't know anything about it, you have never tried it, or you have only eaten sushi, which you don't even associate with raw meat, then you just think disgusting, bacteria, parasites, just no. But when you actually eat it for a few days or some weeks, you realize, wow, I feel the best I ever have in my life. No digestive issues for the first time. My skin is clear. I feel happy. Everything is super good. That's when you start realizing it. That's just one example. I could give you 10 more. Point being, once you experience it, you know that it's the right way. People don't experience it today, and that's why they have no idea what the right way is. There's only one right way, and that's nature. Thanks for watching.